En route from Tallinn, Estonia to Stockholm, Sweden in 1994, the MS Estonia failed to arrive on time, raising concerns. These concerns turned into reality when it had been discovered that 852 of its passengers were dead. The Estonia departed behind schedule at 7:15 on the evening of the 27th of September 1994. She carried 989 people, 186 of whom were staff. The Estonia was fully loaded with passengers and cargo. It was noted that she had a slight list to her starboard side because of the poor distribution of her cargo. The weather that night was less than ideal, with a wind of between 29 and 39 knots and waves reaching heights of 6 meters. The commander of the rescue operation described the weather as a typical autumn storm in the Baltic Sea. The first signs of distress occurred at 1 AM when a large wave hit the bow doors, causing an audible metallic bang. This would later be attributed to the visor locking mechanism failing. Upon investigation, the crew determined that there were no problems. The surviving passengers detailed similar noises over the next 10 minutes. This would be the visor flapping. Shortly after the visor of the ship separated, tearing open the loading ramp behind it, the ship began taking on water immediately and began listing about 15 degrees. Within 15 minutes, this list had increased to 60 degrees and then 90 degrees by 1:50 AM. The Estonia turned to port before her 4 engines ceased operation. The crew signalled the internal alarms to let the crew and passengers know what was going on, but by then water was pouring in from windows, down stairways and from ceiling panels. This would doom most of the passengers located in their cabins at this late hour. The Estonia communicated a mayday at 1:22 AM to the Silja Europa, but this was poorly communicated, and the loss of power would prevent the operator from transmitting the ship's location. The ship swiftly disappeared off radar and sank to a depth of 85 meters, 41 kilometers off the coast of Finland. The Baltic Sea is one of the busiest shipping areas in the world, with over 2,000 ships in the area at any given time. Despite this, only 5 ferries would reach the MS Estonia, the first being the Empress at 2:12 AM. It wouldn't be until 2:30 AM, 40 minutes after the ship had sunk, that a full-scale emergency would be declared. The first helicopter arrived at 3:05 AM, taking survivors to shore. 2 further Finnish border guard helicopters chose to land on the ferries, a risky option given the status of the weather. Of the 989 lives on board, only 138 would be rescued. Ships would rescue 34, while helicopters would save 104 lives. 852 lives would be lost in total. It is estimated that 650 people were inside the ship and failed to escape before it sank. The remaining people who reached the outer decks and were not rescued before perishing would die of drowning and hypothermia. 94 bodies were recovered within 18 months after the disaster. The investigations conducted after the sinking placed most of the blame on the crew and design of the ship. The ship manufacturer had not considered the visor to be crucial to the ship's safety, and the bridge was located too far back to see the visor. If it had been located closer, they may have been able to see it flap after the locking mechanism had failed. Once the visor had torn off, taking parts of the ramp with it, water flowed in and began sloshing in the big open area. This made it impossible for the ship to self-right itself after rolling. The crew's failure to reduce speed after the first bang was heavily criticised, as well as the delays in signalling the alarm and the bridge's lack of guidance. The Estonian emergency position indicating radio beacon required manual activation. This did not happen. If it had, the position of the ship would be clear and rescue efforts would have seen far better success. The wreckage is protected from diving by the Finnish Navy, who monitor the site with radar constantly. Families of the dead seek to raise the ship for investigation and to bury the dead on land. However, this was quickly shut down by the Swedish and Estonian governments. They cited practical difficulties as well as the fear of raising bodies that were still decaying. They did suggest burying the ship in concrete, something that has yet to happen. Conspiracy theorists were quick to suggest alternate causes of the sinking, and not without merit. They claimed Estonia was carrying military equipment to Sweden among its cargo. This was denied. In 2004, it was proven that early in the year of 1994, the ship had carried such equipment. A further investigation launched separately by Estonia and Sweden found that military equipment was on board on the 14th and 20th of December, the week before the sinking, but none on board the day of the sinking. But here is where things get strange. In late 2020, a documentary was released showing footage of the ship filmed by drones. It showed a 4-meter hole in the ship's hull. Immediately, the Estonian Prime Minister and Foreign Minister met with their Swedish counterparts and announced a new technical investigation would take place. The head of the Estonian investigation stated publicly that the hull could not have happened post-sinking and that a collision with a submarine was possible. Without doubt, this was one of the worst disasters in history, and it is sad and distressing to think about what went through the minds of everyone on board during those fateful hours. We can only hope nothing like this happens again.